Welcome to Holy Heartbeats. My name is Nathan, and I narrate Christ-centered testimonies from all over the world. These testimonies include rapture and end-times visions, near-death experiences, encounters with angels and demons, God, Jesus, and even Satan himself. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you are fond of listening to these types of stories, and let me know what you think about these testimonies in the comment section below. Furthermore, for those who want to share their personal testimonies, visions, and revelations from God, you can send us your own stories at holyheartbeat7@gmail.com. I will be very honored to read your testimony, which may inspire, edify, and encourage a lot of people in their personal journey of faith with the Lord Jesus Christ. Wealthy Illuminati cults, the Rothschild bloodline. Two neighboring horse farmers met one day to discuss business. The first farmer sold his horse to the second for $250,000 and then repurchased it for approximately $20 more. He could now advertise his horse, which was actually worth only $20, as one for which he had paid over $250,000. We might laugh at such schemes, and perhaps we should laugh at ourselves for being deceived by them. If there is one domain in life that surpasses even religion in deception and impacts all of us, it is the financial realm. What else can we do about it except laugh? The renowned poet Lord Byron captured the essence of such cunning in his 1823 verse. Who keeps the world, both old and new, in pain or pleasure? Who makes politics run glibber all? The shade of Bonaparte's noble daring, Jew Rothschild and his fellow Christian, Baring. You will learn about other neighbor horse traders in this chapter as well. Rothschild talks about their dynasty. Lord Rothschild, in his book The Shadow of a Great Man, quotes a letter sent by Davidson to Nathan Rothschild on June 24, 1814. As long as a house is like yours, and as long as you work together with your brothers, not a house in the world will be able to compete with you, to cause you harm, or to take advantage of you, for together you can undertake and perform more than any house in the world. The unity of the Rothschild brothers is further illustrated in a letter from Salomon Rothschild to his brother Nathan on February 28, 1815. We are like the mechanism of a watch. Each part is essential. This familial closeness was also evident in the marriages among Mayer Amschel Rothschild's grandchildren. Of the 18 marriages, 16 were between first cousins. Visiting the nation the Rothschilds built. In the summer of 1974, following the Yom Kippur War, this author toured Israel and personally visited many buildings funded by the Rothschilds, such as the Knesset, which serves as Israel's equivalent to the United States Capitol building. One of the Rothschilds bequeathed funds for ongoing construction projects in Israel, and their contributions are honored with a street in Jerusalem named after them. The people of Germany and Turkey have historically shared a close relationship. The reader may recall Turkey's alliance with Germany during World War I. A few influential Jews, including the Rothschilds, were instrumental in drafting the treaty that ended the war. The terms of the treaty granted the Rothschilds control over German-owned railway rights in Palestine, then part of the Ottoman Empire. This control gave the Rothschilds significant leverage to influence policies concerning Palestine. The Rothschilds had extended loans to Turkey amounting to nearly £100 million. When Turkey's government collapsed after World War I as a consequence of being on the losing side, the Rothschilds claimed rights over Palestine due to the unpaid Turkish loans. Subsequently, the British government followed the Rothschilds' directives. The British were granted a mandate over Palestine, and through their proxies in the British government, the Rothschilds orchestrated the steps that ultimately led to the creation of the nation of Israel. The Rothschilds as prophets. One striking theme emerges when listening to the international bankers or reading their works. They believe that money is the force that drives the world. To them, with money, anything is possible. Money becomes a god, worshipped and served with relentless devotion. Even after amassing more wealth than can ever be spent, these adherents continue sacrificing their principles for this false but powerful deity. The esteemed poet-philosopher Heinrich Heine, himself the son of a banker, once declared, "Money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet." Following the lead of the Rothschilds, Heinrich Heine, a Jew, signed his name with a seal of Solomon. Amschel Rothschild is famously quoted as saying, "Give me control of the economics of a country, and I care not who makes her laws." Today, his descendants convene twice daily in London to determine the global price of gold. They also wield significant influence over the actions of the Federal Reserve System, which manages America's financial policies. According to credible eyewitness accounts from individuals prominent enough to visit one of the British Rothschild estates, the family worships another god, Satan. They are said to set a place for him at their dining table. The Rothschilds have allegedly been practicing Satanism for many generations. Their association with the Seal of Solomon, also known as the hexagram, Magen David, six-pointed star, or Star of David, is a significant aspect of this history. Historically, the Seal of Solomon was not recognized as a Jewish symbol until the Rothschilds began using it. Throughout the Middle Ages, the hexagram was associated with Arab magicians, Kabbalist magicians, Druid witches, and Satanists. One of its rare ancient appearances was on the floor of a 1,200-year-old Muslim mosque located where Tel Aviv now stands. In the 12th century, an Ashkenazic Jew named Menahem ben Duji, who claimed to be the Messiah, employed this magical symbol. The Rothschilds, as alleged Satanists, adopted this symbol in 1822 for their coat of arms. Their family name, Rothschild, derives from the 17th century when Mayer Amschel Bauer began hanging a red hexagram outside his house as an identifier. He later chose the name Rothschild, German for Red Shield, in reference to the Red Seal of Solomon. Alice Bailey, in her work A Treatise on White Magic, claimed that a specialized financial group, under the hierarchy, controls all forms of energy conversion, commerce, and exchange, effectively forming a dictatorship over global economic interactions. According to Bailey, this financial group represents the latest arm of the hierarchy's influence. In 1836, Zevi Hirsch Kalischer approached the Rothschild family with a proposal to purchase all of Eretz Israel. While the process took many years, the Rothschilds ultimately played a central role in the creation of the modern state of Israel. It is fitting, therefore, that the nation's official emblem features the magical Seal of Solomon. Interestingly, the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community in Israel refuses to serve in the Israeli army. They firmly believe that the establishment of modern Israel was not an act of Almighty God, but rather the work of wealthy, ungodly, and apostate Jews. In this belief, they stand in contrast to figures like Jerry Falwell, who zealously proclaim that Israel is a divine creation. Men like Jerry Falwell are frequently referenced in Jewish documents that discuss their influence within the fundamentalist movement. God ultimately remains in control, allowing figures such as Hitler, Stalin, and the Rothschilds to rise to power. In the same way that God presided over and permitted the rise of Stalin's Russia, he oversees America and Israel. To selectively interpret scriptures about God appointing rulers to justify one satanic secular communist regime while condemning another is both inconsistent and a misuse of the word of truth. Some object to labeling the conspiracy of power as Jewish rather than satanic, and this objection has merit. However, will those same critics take the next logical step and acknowledge that the nation of Israel, created by the Rothschilds, is not Jewish in essence but satanic? Understanding the motives behind people's actions is complex. If you ask someone why they act a certain way, their answer will likely change from one day to the next. Do people act for a single reason or motive? Labeling this power as solely Jewish, satanic, or Masonic overlooks the human dimension, which is fundamentally godless. Being godless, this system fills its spiritual void by elevating its participants to the status of gods. This ideology leads us back to the Gnostic religions and Satan. Most Jewish people do not concern themselves with the occultic meaning of their cherished Magen David, or Star of David. King David himself had no connection to the hexagram, but his son Solomon did when he worshipped Ashtoreth, a deity also known as Astarte, Chiun, Kaiwan, Remphan, and Saturn. Solomon even built altars to Star, identified with Ashtoreth. Saturn is a significant figure in understanding the ancient origins of this conspiracy. The city of Rome was originally named Saturnia, or the city of Saturn. The Roman Catholic Church retains elements of Saturn worship in its rituals. Saturn is also linked to Lucifer and is associated with evil in various occult dictionaries. Saturn played an important role in the Mithraic religion and among the Druids. Co-masters of the world, connections to JWs, Mormons, and Judaism. It has often been said that all roads lead to Rome. In the context of this investigation, it could equally be said that all paths lead to the Rothschilds. In 1891, Charles T. Russell sent a letter to Baron Lord Rothschild from Palestine, proposing steps to establish Jewish settlements in the region. Russell's letters commended the Rothschilds' financial support in founding Jewish colonies. He wrote, "What is needed here, therefore, next to water and cleanliness, is a good government which will protect the poor from the ravenous and the wealthy. Banking institutions on sound bases and doing business honorably are also greatly needed." Russell continued, "May the God of Jacob direct you, my dear sir, and all interested with you in the deliverance and prosperity of Israel. And blessed will they be who to any extent yield themselves as his servants in fulfilling his will as predicted." When the Mormon Church required financing in the late 19th century, they sought the services of Kuhn, Loeb & Co. To understand the Rothschilds' connection to Kuhn, Loeb & Co., some historical context is necessary. The House of Rothschild employed marriage as a strategic tool to consolidate power, a method long used by royalty. Over the past 2 centuries, Rothschild children have typically married cousins to preserve and strengthen the family's influence. Jacob Schiff, who grew up in the Rothschild residence at 148 Judengasse in Frankfurt, immigrated to the United States with Rothschild capital. He assumed control of a small Jewish banking firm established by Cincinnati dry goods merchants Abraham Kuhn and Solomon Loeb. Schiff also solidified his connection to the family by marrying Solomon Loeb's daughter. In 1885, Solomon Loeb retired, leaving Jacob Schiff to manage Kuhn, Loeb & Cobers on behalf of the Rothschilds. Schiff led the firm until his death in 1920. During the era of Charles T. Russell and Brigham Young, Lord Rothschild was regarded as the lay leader of world Jewry. Edmund Rothschild served as president of the Jewish Colonization Association, a key Zionist organization. Anselm Rothschild claimed that his grandfather, Amschel Mayer Rothschild, stipulated in Clause 15 of his will that his descendants must remain constantly true to their ancestral Jewish faith. However, as the will remains a secret, the authenticity of this clause cannot be verified. Regardless, the Rothschilds have not adhered to Orthodox Jewish practices. If Clause 15 did indeed emphasize faithfulness to orthodoxy, then something appears amiss. The Jewish community has historically lavished praise upon the Rothschilds, stating, "The Rothschilds govern a Christian world. Not a cabinet moves without their advice. They stretch their hand with equal ease from Petersburg to Vienna, from Vienna to Paris, from Paris to London, from London to Washington." Baron Rothschild, the head of the house, is the true king of Judah, the prince of the captivity, the Messiah so long looked for by this extraordinary people. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, Baron Rothschild, possesses more real force than David, more wisdom than Solomon. The Prieur de Sion, or Elders of Sion, has also been connected to the Rothschilds, who are said to serve on a Jewish council of elders of Sion. The Rothschilds have aided the Jewish people, albeit in their own way. For those who admire frugality, the Rothschilds may be idealized. For instance, James Rothschild's charity to impoverished Jews in France amounted to only 5 francs, equivalent to $1. Their dynasty has harmed honest Jews and Christians alike. Today, few dare to criticize the Rothschilds openly. Co-masters of the world, connections to secret societies. The Rothschilds played a pivotal role in the Bavarian Illuminati, and at least one of Amschel Rothschild's sons was a member. Amschel strategically positioned his sons in major European capitals, where each established a principal banking house. Through their private intelligence network and communication systems, the Rothschilds consistently outmaneuvered European governments. The extensive correspondence carried by Rothschild couriers attracted attention, yet their private intelligence and mail services were never disrupted. After the exposure of the Bavarian Illuminati, the central occult influence over European secret societies shifted to Carbonarism, also known as the Alta Vendita. This group was led by another powerful Rothschild, Karl Rothschild, a son of Amschel. In 1818, Karl was involved in drafting a secret document circulated among the headquarters of Masonry by the Alta Vendita. The Masons were alarmed when a copy of this document was lost and offered substantial rewards for its recovery. Originally written in Italian, its title translates to Permanent Instructions or Practical Code of Rules, Guide for the Heads of the Highest Grades of Masonry. The Masonic reference book 10,000 Famous Freemasons indicates that two other sons of Amschel, James Mayer Rothschild and Nathan Mayer Rothschild, were also Freemasons. James, based in Paris, was a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason, while Nathan in London was a member of the Lodge of Emulation. Additionally, Jewish Freemason Katz notes that a third brother, Solomon Meir Rothschild, was initiated into Freemasonry on June 14, 1809. The Rothschilds and their influence in Freemasonry. The Rothschilds gained considerable influence within Freemasonry. The St. Simonians, occult religious millennialist forerunners of communism, praised Baron de Rothschild in their magazine Le Globe. They wrote, "There is no one today who better represents the triumph of equality and labor in the 19th century than Monsieur le Baron de Rothschild." Was this Jew born a millionaire? No, he was born poor. And if only you knew what genius, patience, and hard work were required to construct that European edifice called the House of Rothschild, you would admire rather than insult it. Lionel de Rothschild, whose family added the D to their name, was involved with the First Communist Internationale. Giuseppe Mazzini, the Freemason who helped establish communism, praised Rothschild, stating, "Rothschild could be king of France if he so desired." Adolphe Crémieux, a French Jewish Mason, was another key figure in this network. The Rothschilds provided at least $1,000 to Crémieux, Salomon Monk, and Sir Moses Montefiore to travel to Damascus. Their mission was to secure the release of Jews imprisoned there and to convince the Turkish Sultan that charges of ritual murder against them were false. According to the three Jewish authors of Dope Inkomers, the B'nai B'rith was a spin-off of the Order of Zion and was organized as a covert intelligence front for the Rothschild family. It is highly probable that the B'nai B'rith served as an intelligence cover for the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds are also prominent within the Bilderberg Group, and they have strong ties to the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. While many people today do not view the CFR as a secret society, it was originally formed as part of one and kept secret for many years despite its immense power. Carroll Quigley, a professor of international relations at Georgetown University, exposed the Round Table Group in his book Tragedy and Hope. The Rothschilds supported Cecil Rhodes in the creation of De Beers. Later, Rhodes drafted 7 wills establishing a secret society modeled after the Jesuits and Masons, with the aim of bringing about a one-world government centered around Britain and the Rhodes Scholarships. The inner group of this society was formed in March 1891 and included Rhodes, Stead, Lord Esher, Brett, and 33rd degree Mason Alfred Milner. A secondary circle of potential members of the Circle of Initiates included figures such as the Jew Lord Balfour, Sir Harry Johnson, Lord Rothschild, Lord Grey, and others. Initially, Lord Rothschild was part of the inner circle of Rhodes's secret society, but he was eventually replaced by his son-in-law, Lord Rosebery, who was less conspicuous. The Fabian socialists dominated the staff at Oxford when Rhodes scholars began arriving. These scholars were indoctrinated and prepared to become part of an international socialist New World Order. The Round Table Group evolved from the inner executive circle of Rhodes's secret society, and the outer circle was formed after the turn of the 20th century. Following World War I, the Round Table Group extended its influence by organizing a front organization, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, RIIA. The Council on Foreign Relations became the American counterpart of this organization. The inner circle continues to control the outer circle and its two front organizations, the RIIA and CFR. The CFR in turn established several other fronts, including the Institute of Pacific Relations, IPR. Co-masters of the world, management of the Catholic and Tsarist wealth, and the capture of the Orthodox Church's wealth. In the early 19th century, the Pope sought a loan from the Rothschilds. Over time, the Rothschilds developed a strong relationship with the Vatican, leading one journalist to sarcastically remark, "Rothschild has kissed the hand of the Pope. Order has at last been re-established." Eventually, the Rothschilds were entrusted with managing much of the Vatican's wealth. The Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 2, page 497, states, "It is a somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds that at the present time, 1905, the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure." Researcher Eustace Mullins also writes that the Rothschilds took over all financial operations of the worldwide Catholic Church in 1823. Today, the Catholic Church's vast banking and financial operations are heavily interwoven with the Rothschilds and the broader international banking system. Similarly, the great wealth of the Russian czars was entrusted to the Rothschilds, with $35 million deposited in the Rothschilds Bank of England and $80 million in their Paris bank. The Rothschilds were involved in financing the Russian Revolution, which resulted in the confiscation of large portions of the Orthodox Church's wealth. Due to their influence, the Rothschilds have successfully prevented the legitimate heirs of the Tsarist fortune from withdrawing a single penny of the millions deposited in their various banks. The Mountbattens, who were related to the Rothschilds, spearheaded court battles to block any claims to the fortune. In essence, the money the Rothschilds invested in the Russian Revolution was paid back not only by the Bolsheviks in millions of dollars of gold, but also by seizing the enormous deposits of the Tsar's wealth. Today, that fortune is estimated to be worth over $50 billion. Co-masters of the world, control over Satanism and witchcraft. Chapter 2, Section 1 lists the names of a witchcraft council of 13, which is reportedly under Rothschild control. This group issues directives to various other occult organizations. One of the purest forms of Satanism can be traced back to the Jewish Sabbatean sect and its Frankist offshoot. The leaders of this movement, leading up to the Rothschilds, included Sabbatai Zevi, 1626 to 1676. Nathan of Gaza, dates unknown. Jacob Frank, 1726 to 1791. Three connections between Satanism, evil, and money. Money naturally gravitates toward evil. For example, a woman may receive a great sum of money by prostituting herself, but who would pay her for maintaining her virginity or dignity? Similarly, if you are a hitman, you may be paid handsomely for eliminating your target, but who will pay you if you miss? Second, evil individuals believe that where there's a will, there's a way, and they are willing to sell their souls for the pursuit of wealth. They will employ wickedness to gain money. While most people are aware of these two connections, a third might have escaped their attention. Thirdly, the principal figures who helped establish international banking were Satanists from the very beginning. These Satanists now are the ones who run the Federal Reserve and are responsible for the creation of U.S. Federal Reserve notes. Simply having total control over the supply of U.S. paper money gives them significant leverage over the world's finances, not to mention their control over the World Bank. It is no accident, then, that once they established financial control over the globe, they would do everything in their power to divide, conquer, and destroy both the Christian and Muslim faiths in God. these powerful bankers relate to faith in God, much as Cain related to his brother Abel. That they may be connected to the Jewish people does not mean they have their best interests at heart. Initially, Sabbatai Zevi was rejected by many Jews. His sect gained momentum in the latter half of the 17th century in southeastern Poland. In 1759–60, 500 Jewish Sabbateans converted to Christianity. In 1715, 109 of the 415 Jewish families in Frankfurt were engaged in money lending, while the rest were merchants of various kinds. The principles held by Satanism were a natural fit to justify the behavior of many of these Jewish bankers. Many divisions and conflicts between religious groups worldwide have been encouraged and supported by the wealth of the powerful elite. Unfortunately, many have been misled into believing that being devout and faithful to God is the cause of religious strife. In some parts of the world, Muslims, Christians, and others have coexisted peacefully for centuries. While religious tensions may arise from within the religions themselves to some degree, the fuel that keeps these fires burning, and the source of many conflicts, often comes from the wealth and influence of the powerful elite. A glaring example of this is the Iran-Iraq War. Co-masters of the world, control over World War I treaty. When Germany fell, not only did Rothschild agents draft the treaty and prepare the concept of the League of Nations, but Max Rothschild was one of 11 men who took control of Bavaria. Max Rothschild was also a Freemason in Lodge No. 11 in Munich, Germany. Co-masters of the world, connections to MI5, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, CFR, and others. Victor Rothschild, who worked for J.P. Morgan & Co., was a key figure in MI5, British intelligence. Victor Rothschild was also a communist and a member of the Apostles' Club at Cambridge. Lord Rothschild was one of the original members of Cecil Rhodes's Round Table Group, which later evolved into the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. It was the Rothschilds who financed Cecil Rhodes's ventures, starting in Africa. The Rothschilds have several agents who were supported by their capital and continue to serve them well, including the Morgans and the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers were Marrano Jews. The original Rockefeller made his fortune by selling narcotics, which were not illegal at the time. After acquiring some capital, he expanded into the oil business. However, it was Rothschild capital that enabled the Rockefellers to amass such power. They also financed the activities of Edward Harriman, railroads, and Andrew Carnegie, steel. Co-masters of the world, power within Christendom. The Rothschilds wielded significant influence and power not only in secret societies but also within the churches of Christendom. The Salvation Army, under the suggestion of the Rothschilds, adopted the red shield as their logo, Roth Red, Child Shield. One history of the Rothschilds remarks, "The Rothschilds rapidly propelled themselves into a position of immense financial power and political influence. They became an independent force in the life of Europe, accountable to no one and, to a large extent, reliant on no one." Popular lampoons depicted them as the true rulers of Christendom. Some members of the Rothschild family have been involved in campaigns to loosen public morals. The first executive secretary of the National Student Forum was John Rothschild. This forum changed its name frequently, and one of its aims was to promote public nudity and free love. The organization included constituent groups such as the Radcliffe Liberal Club, Union Theological Seminary Contemporary Club, and Yale Liberal Club, to name just a few. A further development was the Youth Peace Federation, which consisted of groups such as the League of Youth of the Community Church, Methodist Epworth League, New York District, Young Judea, and the Young People's Fellowship of St. Philip's Parish. American religious figures have ties to the Rothschilds, especially through various agents. Harry Emerson Fosdick, pastor of Rockefeller's Church, was also among the presidents of the Rockefeller Foundation. John Foster Dulles, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, served as chairman of the board of the Rockefeller Foundation and married a Rockefeller, Janet Pomeroy Avery. John Foster Dulles was also an important official in the Federal Council of Churches of Christ. Every path seems to lead back to the Rothschilds. Numerous connections, often mentioned by conspiracy theorists, tie the Rothschilds to various groups: Jews, Masons, intelligence communities, international bankers, the Prieur de Sion, Catholics, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the New Age, and various cults. Each of these elements ultimately connects back to the Rothschilds' power. Extent of Rothschild power. According to one source, it was estimated that they controlled half the wealth of the world. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York was controlled by 5 banks that owned 53% of its stock. These 5 banks were controlled by Nathan M. Rothschild and Sons of London. Control over the U.S. Federal Reserve is essentially control over the world's money. This fact alone illustrates the immense power of the Rothschilds. By examining who has been appointed to head the Federal Reserve and run its operations, the connections between the Federal Reserve System and the Rothschilds become more evident. Another private enterprise that the Rothschilds direct under the name Federal is Federal Express. While anyone else could be taken to court for making their business sound like a government entity, the Rothschilds face no such scrutiny. It is fitting for them to appropriate the name Federal, as they, through MI6 and the CIA, provide instructions to the U.S. government. Senators are bought and paid off by their system, as investigators of the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, BCCI, are uncovering. The Rothschilds have been intimately involved in witchcraft and the Illuminati since its early known history. The Kaiser of Germany seems to refer to them when he said, "The magic powers of money, as wielded by the Lord of Lucre, are powers of black magic at its blackest." If the Rothschilds control half of the world's wealth, it suggests that if they are to be part of the global leadership, they must have powerful allies. The Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are just 2 of the 13 families that control the Illuminati. 2 prominent Jewish families that appear to play key roles are the Oppenheims and the Oppenheimers. Oppenheim was based in Cologne, and the Oppenheimers were early members of the Bavarian Illuminati. The Bund der Gerechten, League of the Just, which was a front for the Illuminati, was largely run by Jews who were Satanists. This Bund, partially financed by the Rothschilds, paid the Satanist and Mason Karl Marx to write the Communist Manifesto. Gumpel Oppenheim, a Jew, was part of the inner circle of the Bund. His relative, Heinrich Oppenheim, masterminded the Communist Revolution of 1848 in Germany. Official histories of the Communist Party even acknowledge the Bund as the predecessor to communism. The Oppenheimers appear to be closely connected to the Rothschilds. J. Robert Oppenheimer, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, was exposed as a communist. Harry Oppenheimer, an international banker, is the chairman of the Jewish De Beers Worldwide Diamond Monopoly and the Anglo-American Corporation. Oppenheimers also hold important financial positions in the U.S., running around 10 large foundations, including the Oppenheimer Haas Trust of New York, which cares for needy Jewish children. The Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 2, states that other Jewish families adopted the Rothschild plan. These families included the Lazards, Stearns, Speyers, and Seligmans. The Rothschild plan was to place family members in the 5 largest European capitals to coordinate their activities. One of Germany's largest magazines is Stern, and Ernst Stern, a member of this family, is second in command at the World Bank. The Jewish families that founded the Frankfurt Judenloge, the Masonic lodge the Rothschilds belonged to in Frankfurt, included the Adlers, Speyers, Reises, Sichels, Ellisons, Hanaus, Geisenheimers, and Goldschmidts. Isaac Hildesheim, a Jew who later changed his name to Justus Hiller, is credited as the founder of this Frankfurt lodge. Michael Hess, principal of the Reformed Jewish School Philanthropin, was another important figure in the lodge, as was Dr. Ludwig Baruch, later Born, who joined in 1808. Most of these Frankfurt Jewish Freemasons were involved in commerce. From 1817 to 1842, these Freemasons were the leaders of the Frankfurt Jewish community. A Gentile Mason in Frankfurt, Johann Christian Ehrmann, began warning the German people that the Frankfurt Jewish Masons aimed to establish a world republic based on humanism. In 1816, he published a pamphlet, Das Judentum in der Maurerei, The Jews in Masonry. A powerful ally of the world's Jewish elite can be seen in figures like Oliver Cromwell, who was considered a Mason. Cromwell was financed by Jews and helped them gain power in England. He was willing to cooperate with the Jews because he became convinced of British Israelism. Since the core of the conspiracy for power is Jewish, those allied with it are often influenced by their views toward the Jewish people. The religious idea that the British people are descended from the tribes of Israel does not automatically place people in the camp of the conspiracy. Some British Israelites understand that the so-called Jewish people have no legitimate claim over the promises of God. For this reason, they realize it is not a Christian duty to blindly follow their every move. When Christians are arrested and abused in Israel, and yet other Christians fail to stand up for them, it demonstrates how much influence the concept of the chosen race theory has over Christendom. Some British Israelites, such as Mormons, old New England wealthy families that make up the order, certain Masons and New Agers, and non-Jewish members of the Prieur de Sion, are collaborating with the one world power. The Anglican Church, which is run by Freemasons, strongly supports British Israelism. In contrast, a variety of groups that oppose the conspiracy, such as some neo-Nazi factions and various unrelated churches, also embrace British Israelism. These groups are often lumped together under the label identity movement, which is misleading due to their significant differences. It is important to distinguish between those groups that approach issues from a Christian perspective, seeking to place themselves under the authority of God, and those that align themselves with the New Order's authority, or their own. Co-masters of the world, the media. Eustace Mullins has published research in his book Who Owns the TV Networks, revealing that the Rothschilds control all three major U.S. television networks, as well as other segments of the recording and mass media industries. Additionally, they control Reuters. According to other sources, CNN, which initially posed an independent challenge to the Jewish network monopoly, eventually became part of the system after facing repeated manipulation. Money from BCCI, a financial institution tied to the New World Order and involved in controlling congressmen, as well as scandals such as the Iran-Contra affair and Centrust, also played a role in CNN's rise. Perhaps nothing dominates the lives of many Americans as much as television. People sit in front of their screens, absorbing whatever is projected to them. On a daily basis, the most significant influence the Rothschilds have on the lives of Americans is through the three major networks under their direction. To illustrate this, we will examine who runs these networks. Please note that the following list may be outdated, as writing a book ensures some information will become dated over time. The Rothschilds' history by a Jewish writer related to the Rothschilds. Jewish writer Anka Molstein authored Baron James, The Rise of the French Rothschilds. I prefer to paraphrase and make brief quotes from her book, as I aim to document the mindset and history of the Rothschilds for the reader. Anka Molstein holds no animosity toward the Rothschilds, so her perspective may be more acceptable to readers than my own. While I cannot compel the reader to read her book, I can provide a summary of key points. Other books cover many of the same topics as Molstein's work, but again, my paraphrase will carry more weight than a footnoted article. The reader is encouraged to explore the book firsthand if they have the time and are interested in the details of James Rothschild's life. In the 18th century, Jews were confined to living in ghettos. Mayer Amschel Rothschild lived in the Frankfurt ghetto. The Jewish community faced repression from outsiders and lived in geographically isolated and self-contained communities. These communities maintained a secret relay system to communicate across the ghettos, using Hebrew characters as an effective code. Because of ongoing persecution, the Jewish communities were tightly organized and highly cohesive. They were deeply hostile to Christians, who had restricted their own people from money lending with interest. As a result, money lending became a Jewish enterprise. In the 16th century, the German princes of Thum and Taxis initiated a postal service, and Mayer Amschel Rothschild loaned them money. The Rothschilds took advantage of the latitude granted to the Thurn and Taxis service, exploiting their ability to intercept letters and control delivery for their own financial gain. While Mayer Amschel hired Christian workers when it benefited him, most of his business and banking operations were managed by his close-knit family. For example, Mayer hired a young Christian woman to write his letters. Mayer Amschel Rothschild and his family were deeply committed to their Jewish heritage. Mayer even chose his sons' wives based on the business advantages their unions would bring to the family. The oldest son, who had fallen in love with a woman of his own choosing, was bitter about his father's decision, but ultimately complied. Mayer's daughters all married bankers from cities such as Worms, Seychelles, and Bafus. Mayer had 10 children, all of whom worked in the family business. From an early age, Jews were taught that Christians were responsible for their suffering and that they should be feared and despised. Mayer Amschel's house even contained secret underground passages for added protection. The Rothschilds' strategic moves. His carriage was equipped with secret drawers. The Napoleonic War greatly benefited the Rothschild business, as they outsmarted Napoleon due to their exceptional connections. The Rothschilds smuggled goods during the English blockade of Napoleon's Europe, amassing millions in the process. The Rothschilds constantly shifted strategies during this period, always maneuvering to avoid any political commitment. One of the key strategies Mayer Amschel Rothschild implemented was sending his 5 sons to the major capitals of Europe. Anke Mulstein attributes the respectability of Jewish money lending to the help it provided merchants and entrepreneurs, though the author of this work believes merchants had been borrowing for centuries before the acceptance of interest in the 19th century. This change in public perception was largely due to the influence of those who controlled the major newspapers at the time, Jews and Freemasons. The obligation to reimburse a loan and pay interest became less burdensome for men whose businesses had prospered as a result of borrowed money. The Jewish lender ceased to be seen as a bloodsucker. Often, he became an associate of the borrower. The Bible, however, says that a borrower is a slave to the lender, hardly an ideal relationship. Financing monarchs proved to be a lucrative business, and the Rothschilds had developed several traits in the ghetto that made their family resilient and hard to stop. The great gift the Frankfurt ghetto bestowed upon him, James Rothschild, was adaptability, a quality matched by the driving force of his ambition, his prodigious energy, tremendous concentration, and determination to succeed, even at the expense of Christians. James Rothschild was determined to carve his place in the world. The 5 Rothschild brothers, each positioned in a different European capital, set up their own private courier system, which was faster than regular mail. The Rothschilds received political and economic news faster than anyone else, including the monarchs. Thus, the Rothschilds had news before anyone else, including government ministers. They also knew how to use this information to their advantage. This is akin to making money by knowing the future. Their correspondence with each other was often in code. Their world was one of finance, politics, and secrecy. During the anti-Napoleonic period, the Rothschilds increased their wealth tenfold. James, moreover, enjoyed rock-solid strength and stability, built by his family. That family, united by mutual trust and an invisible wall of secrecy, was also open to the outside world. Such was the cohesion of the Rothschilds that the removal of one or more of them left no gap in their defenses. The Rothschilds carried out espionage through their own intelligence service and engaged in other questionable subversive activities, all of which remained untraceable. Whenever Mayer Amschel and his sons were on the verge of being exposed, a highly placed individual would intervene and stop the investigation. They made their fortune through technically illegal activities. A key example was when they took a large sum of money from the Elector of Hesse and, instead of investing it in government bonds as instructed, they invested it in higher return opportunities while still providing the Elector with the return from the bonds. Anke writes, "The Elector was never the wiser, and even if he had been, he could hardly have complained of disobedience." In summary, the close-knit, almost mafia-like unity of the Rothschild family, combined with their strategic placement in the major European capitals and their own rapid secret intelligence and courier service, gave them the contacts and power to manipulate business opportunities across Europe. Where does Nazism fit into Satan's plans? Let me briefly recap some of the key elements of the plan. As you read through these details from my intensive research into high-level Satanism, see if you can spot the irony in the satanic agenda. It is truly ironic that, in all the twisted reasoning behind why the leading Satanists believe they must follow this plan, they do not seem to realize that it will ultimately fulfill God's revealed plan. How pride blinds us. For the sake of brevity, I will forego my usual method of documentation. I suggest reading my book, Be Wise as Serpents, for references and further details. If you have more questions, feel free to write to me. Otherwise, this article would be far too bulky for a newsletter. The brilliant plan given to the Illuminati involved creating a thesis and its opposite, an antithesis. The process would repeat itself until the desired outcome was achieved. Out of the battle between the two would emerge the synthesis. From the chaos, a new order would arise, echoing the Masonic slogan, "Order out of chaos." If the thesis were like a hammer and the antithesis like an anvil, what was caught in between would either be broken or reshaped. The plan envisioned 3 world wars to bring this to fruition. The hammer would be constructed and given a secure base in Russia, forming what we now recognize as communism. The first anvil would emerge from the economic chaos in Germany, creating National Socialism. This anvil would be destroyed in the Second World War, only to be replaced by another anvil, democracy. The first 2 world wars accomplished precisely what they were meant to. From the First World War came 1. A secure satanic dictatorship in Russia, providing a solid base for further global subversion. 2. The Rothschild family gained partial control over Palestine, laying the groundwork for Satan to rule from Jerusalem someday. 3. Weapons of mass destruction and terror. 4. The establishment of the League of Nations. From the Second World War came 1. The expansion of Russia's secure base into a world power. 2. Complete control over Palestine by the Rothschilds. 3. Advancements in air power, including long-range missiles, jets, secret flying saucers, and powerful submarines, technologies that individuals could not produce. Those in control of production thus controlled all air and sea routes across the globe. 4. The Cold War, and an era of terror designed to convince the public of the need for Satan's one world order. 5. The creation of the United Nations. The Third World War, according to this plan, would lead to the establishment of a new religious system. This war would be intentionally tailored to resemble the Bible's Armageddon, so that after its conclusion, people would believe that Satan himself was the Messiah. The war would be so catastrophic that Satan could then step in and restore order out of the chaos, presenting himself as the savior. Again, it would be order out of chaos, as the Masonic documents repeatedly claim. The Third World War was planned to occur during a period of 7 years of tribulation, beginning in 1992 and lasting until 1999. Just as the Second World War emerged from the global depression, this tribulation was expected to repeat, on a larger scale, the plagues of Egypt. Satan told his followers that this tribulation would be a form of revenge for what had been done to Egypt by God and Moses, giving the world a much bigger dose of what happened to ancient Egypt. To a mind controlled by demonic influence, this revenge strategy makes sense, especially when the ultimate end result is framed as the salvation of the world by the light bearer, or the morning star, also known as Lucifer. For most of us, the idea of such pain and destruction seems like sheer demonic madness. And indeed, it is. At the core of the one-world system is Satanism, the satanic agenda and its hidden front. The forces behind the one-world system hide themselves behind various fronts, such as Jewish finance, socialism, Aryanism, British Israelism, Zionism, and Freemasonry. These are simply tools designed to manipulate the masses into serving the larger plan. The so-called conspiracy to create the one-world system has enlisted the help of nearly everyone. This is because most of the religious systems at the top are controlled by Satanists who understand their purpose and direct people's religious efforts. For detailed documentation on this, refer to Be Wise as Serpents. Nazism itself was a pagan Gnostic religious system, and its high priest, Adolf Hitler, understood his role in relation to Satan's mission. More on this later. The Jewish people, as I use the term in its broadest sense, are being manipulated. The satanic hierarchy, however, has little true concern for Judaism. Although it may appear that the plan initially involves creating a religious leader with credentials that align with the Jewish Messiah, this is merely a deception. The actions of the Rothschilds and other satanic Jewish bloodlines during World War II clearly show that their primary allegiance is not to the Old Testament or even Orthodox Judaism, but to Satan himself. At some point in the future, both Orthodox and conservative Jews will realize that the Messiah, who is already alive and waiting to play his role, will offer them only temporary relief. They are being deceived, and eventually they will be discarded by the dictatorship of the New World Order. Constance Cumby accurately observes that the New Age movement mirrors Nazism in almost every way. For those interested in a detailed comparison, I recommend reading pages 114 to 120 in The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. In 1952, James Larratt Battersby published the Holy Book of Adolf Hitler for the German World Church in Europe. Aside from some pro-German ideas included to win the favor of the intended audience, the book provides an exact description of the events that would unfold over the next 50 years to bring about the New World Order. The reason some of Battersby's pro-German ideas are not valid is that the satanic hierarchy is not truly concerned with the German people, except to use them for their purposes. Battersby claimed that the book was given to him in the Spirit, and that it was written so that God may open the eyes of the Gentiles to truth and carry his holy gospel to the ends of the earth. The book serves as a clear summary of Satan's plans, which have largely been executed since 1952. The Rothschilds, along with other leading satanic families, financed Jewish Mason and devoted Satanist Karl Marx to write Das Kapital. The Satanists controlling key Masonic groups, along with other organizations they controlled, were responsible for starting communism. The original idea came from Satan, who revealed it in meticulous detail during a Feast of the Beast to those highest in the satanic hierarchy. Albert Pike and Giuseppe Mazzini were two men in key positions who were privy to these plans. After establishing international socialism, communism, the Satanists created a temporary antithesis known as National Socialism, Nazism. To bring this about, they turned to the Masonic lodges and other secret societies. The secret occult, Gnostic, and Satanic societies, along with the Illuminati, helped form the Thule Gesellschaft, the Thule Society in English. Adolf Hitler was a member of this occult group, as were many of the leaders who would later rise to prominence in the Nazi regime, such as Rudolf Hess. The Thule Society adopted the Masonic and Hindu symbol, the swastika, which was later adopted by the Nazi Party as its emblem. In other words, the Nazi Party's roots can be traced back to the Masonic lodges in Germany. The Vril was another secret occult group that many Nazi leaders were part of. Hitler himself was also a member of the Theosophical Society, which had strong satanic and Masonic ties. Both Alice Bailey and Hitler studied under Tibetan monks, Hindus, occultists, and black magicians. They also studied the Gnostics and various major pagan and occult religious systems. An example of how highly valued the swastika was for Freemasons before Hitler tarnished its image can be seen in a quote from Joseph Fort Newton, a Baptist minister and high-ranking Mason. The second of these volumes also contains an essay by Thomas Carr with a list of lodges and a study of their history, customs, and emblems, especially the swastika. Speculative Masons are now said to be joining, seeking more light on what are called the lost symbols of Masonry. After years of promoting and using the swastika, the Freemasons ceased its use after Hitler's regime. The Holy Book of Adolf Hitler provides the answer to why the Theosophical Society worked so hard to destroy the British Empire. Initially, it seemed puzzling that the presidents of the Theosophical Society, who were connected to the satanic hierarchy, would want to undermine the British Empire. The reason this seemed strange is that Great Britain is considered the mother country of Satanism and witchcraft. The secret political power and the fall of the British Empire. The center of secret political power is geographically located in England. One of the largest and most powerful secret fronts for Satanism is British Israelism. The reason the British Empire was ultimately destroyed is that Satan had already determined, even before 1870, that the steps to world government would include the creation of around 9 or 10 continental blocks. The unification of Europe into a single country or bloc could not be achieved as long as Great Britain focused primarily on maintaining its empire. As long as Britain had an empire, it would never want to join a unified Europe. In fact, all European nations would have to be convinced to relinquish their colonies. This is why the world power sought to enlist as much help as possible in fighting Portugal in Angola in more recent history, including large Masonic-controlled Christian denominations that donated millions of dollars to the National Council of Churches and the World Council of Churches. These funds were then passed on to guerrillas to purchase weapons and ammunition. The Theosophical Society is largely responsible for India's independence from Britain. First, the Theosophical Society managed to alter British policy, making Britain unpopular. The Theosophical president, Annie Besant, who published the largest English-language paper in India, fiercely criticized British rule in her newspapers, eventually leading to her arrest. Gandhi and other Indian leaders played a role in Besant becoming president of the Indian National Congress, the political party that still dominates Indian politics today. The Theosophist Mahatma Gandhi, following in the footsteps of Annie Besant, led the Indian people against British rule. However, the final blow to the British Empire was dealt by another Theosophist, Adolf Hitler. It is commonly believed that the powerful Axis attacks in World War II delivered the death blow to the British Empire. The truth, however, is that the elite wanted the empire to fall and used every means at their disposal to convince the British public and the indigenous populations of the colonies that Britain was too weak after World War II to maintain control, leading to independence movements across its colonies. It may be difficult for some to grasp, but the Illuminati controlled Russia, Great Britain, Germany, and France during World War II. Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin were all Masons. Charles de Gaulle of France was closely associated with several esoteric groups, and the Prière de Sion and Grand Orient Masons helped him rise to power in the 1950s. Churchill was both a Zionist and a pro-Fabian socialist. Stalin, though more independent, largely followed the expected course. Roosevelt was a Zionist, pro-communist, and socialist. Both Churchill and Roosevelt hailed from important elite bloodlines. World War II was not only fought to adjust people's thinking toward accepting European unity, but also to lay the groundwork for a world government. Satan already ruled the world through his secret chain of command, but he sought to openly rule the hearts of mankind and be publicly hailed as both ruler and savior. Who was Adolf Hitler? Hitler's father was the product of the Rothschilds' secret breeding program, with his grandmother being impregnated as part of this scheme. It appears that Hitler was groomed for his role without initially knowing his heritage. He only learned of his Jewish bloodline after coming to power in Germany. Despite being strict in his New Age religious practices, such as following a vegetarian diet, Hitler was not celibate and had romantic relationships with several women. His seed, representing the powerful generational occult bloodline of the Rothschilds, was hidden within an Ashkenazi Jewish bloodline, some of which has reportedly migrated to the United States. In fact, Hitler's generational occult power was likely passed on after his death, possibly through a ritual where his heart was pierced and someone else took in his power with a kiss of death. What I am suggesting is that Hitler's offspring are alive today, and his terrifying Antichrist spirit was passed on to someone who continues his legacy. Let me remind you of some of Hitler's own prophecies about himself and his goals. He claimed, "At the time of supreme peril, I must die a martyr's death for the people. But after my death, something truly great will come. An overwhelming revelation to the world of my mission." He believed the world would witness his divinity. Furthermore, he said, "My spirit will rise from the grave, and the world will see that I was right." On April 30th, 1945, von Ribbentrop was told, "You will see that my spirit will rise from the grave." National Socialism, he claimed, is even more than a religion. It is the will to make mankind anew. He believed that all creative energy will pass to the new man. Hitler also claimed to be the true fulfillment of Marx's socialism, stating, "I am not only the conqueror, but also the executor of Marxism, of that part of it which is essential and justified, stripped of its Jewish Talmudic dogma." In essence, he is saying that whatever veneer of Jewishness Marx's satanic plan carried, he opposed it and sought to destroy that facade. Such statements reveal that the core message of various elite figures, like Hitler, aligns with the same satanic agenda when stripped of their differently adorned veneers. Hitler is regarded by his modern followers as the Messiah, the Holy Spirit, and the martyred savior of his people. The blasphemous Holy Book of Adolf Hitler proclaims, "All hail to God's Christ and chosen, Adolf Hitler, Lord of Lords and King of Kings, the eternal Adolf Hitler." Such statements are egregious blasphemies. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Hitler's demonic spirit and his descendants live on today. Some Rothschild descendants, including those connected to Hitler, have found salvation in Christ as their Lord and Savior. Nevertheless, it is uncertain whether this powerful occult branch of the Rothschild family will be utilized by the New World Order. What is evident is that Hitler's Antichrist spirit will undoubtedly receive extensive demonic support. The same forces that manifested in National Socialism and International Socialism, communism, unleashed a demonic influence that pervaded much of Europe. Europe today officially portrays itself in disturbing symbolism. For instance, a stamp commemorating the second election of the European Parliament depicts Europe as a beast with Venus upon it. Additionally, an official poster illustrates the same demonic forces that sought to build the Tower of Babel. The same demonic entities that guided communist and Nazi leaders are now at work among Europe's leaders. Armies of demons trample over moral values throughout Europe. Without a doubt, the man who will rule the one-world government will derive his power from a demonic, supernatural source. According to the Book of Revelation, God will permit an angel to unlock the abyss, unleashing hordes of demonic spirits upon the earth. My conclusion is that Satan has an abundance of antichrists at his disposal, and Hitler's personal occult power is not essential for the success of the New World Order. I am often reluctant to discuss the end times from Scripture because many are deeply confused about the clear teachings it provides. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and other scriptures plainly state that Christians must witness a great apostasy and the revelation of the Antichrist before Christ's return. While we should live each day as though it may be our last, the scriptures are clear that the apostles themselves did not anticipate Jesus' return imminently. They knew certain events had to transpire first. The church has endured tribulations since Pentecost, and according to the Word of God, it will go through the Great Tribulation. If we remain a faithful remnant, we will be spared from the wrath of God, but we will not escape the tribulation caused by Satan, which will include martyrdom. New Age leaders are already prepared to assist in the cleansing of faithful Christians from the earth, viewing us as bothersome disciples of truth. Their rationale is eerily similar to the Nazi justifications that people must pay their karmic debt and that their deaths will ultimately benefit them. How easily truth is turned on its head. Plans are already in place to utilize rail lines to transport large groups of civilians to labor camps. When we compare Nazi Germany to the New World Order's agenda, it becomes clear that Nazi Germany served as a prototype for Satan's timetable in the years to come. To illustrate how the pagan religion of Nazism serves as an inspiration to Satanists and New Agers, consider the actions of Anton LaVey, the leader of the Visible Church of Satan. He made a pilgrimage to Hitler's Black Order initiation castle, where the SS practiced their sacred rituals. The SS reportedly brought the Holy Grail to Germany and hid it before the war's end. On May 2, 1945, a select group of SS officers, initiated into the higher mysteries of Nazi paganism, concealed the Grail in the Schleigeis Glacier at the base of the Hochpfeiler Mountain, which stands 3,000 meters high. Seekers who ventured into this area have been found decapitated and mutilated, and the Black Order continues to guard the location in anticipation of the day the Grail will be revealed to the world. Speculation once suggested that the year 1995 might be significant, but such predictions remain conjecture. What is crucial for us is to focus on experiencing the kingdom of God here and now. Let us prepare our hearts and lives for Almighty God's new world order, even as the Satanists launch their counterfeit version. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and I'll see you in our next video.